noon. It's an SEC matchup at Kyle Field. Texas A&M is hosting the Missouri Tigers. Texas A&M opened up as a 2.5-point favorite and now sitting at about a 2-point favorite in most places that I've looked. Over under is set at 48.5 for this one. Texas A&M has already been on a little bit of a roller coaster ride this season, right? With the week 1 game against Notre Dame, I think the team met expectations in some ways and kind of fell short of expectations in other ways. I guess you would point to offensively. And Missouri this season was a darling coming out of 2023. Beat Ohio State to end the season, and everybody, so and so sat out, blah, blah, blah. I know everybody had somebody sit out, but Missouri was a damn good football team last year, guys. And I think they're a good football team again. And statistically, we're going to look at them here in just a second. They are a good team on paper, but they've got a few flaws, and it's kind of cost them a couple of times this year, or it almost cost Vanderbilt into overtime there. Vanderbilt misses a kick. And then some people would point to the Boston College, margin of victory in that football game and say, Missouri didn't meet expectations there. So both teams have had games that were certainly lackluster, and both teams' fan bases are carrying, some serious expectations for both of these teams going forward. The Texas A&M fans have been loud and clear that they are fully behind Mike Elko at Texas A&M right now, and they believe in the direction that this program is headed. Let's jump into the matchup a little bit deeper. Brady Cook returns to Missouri, and in my opinion, in the preseason, I had Brady Cook on up there with some of the best college football quarterbacks that were returning. I felt like this was a no-brainer for Missouri. A lot of guys coming back on offense. We'll get to some of those, but Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, you go in the transfer portal, you pick up Nate Noel, Marcus Carroll, and all those things have worked out pretty well, except for the fact that this team has had issues getting to the red zone, and we'll kind of get into the statistics, but you can see there, Brady Cook with only 4 touchdowns this year, with the weapons that he has, you would feel, you feel like you'd be, he'd have more touchdowns at this point. I guess I should just leave it at that. Texas A&M, on the other hand, Connor Wegman went down. We don't know when he's coming back. I said it in the early preview this week. I don't know that it matters when Connor Wegman is coming back, but Marcel Reed has stepped in, and it feels like the fan base has really kind of embraced him. And he brings something to the offense that Connor Wegman just doesn't bring to the offense, Mason, and that's being able to run the football. And this team, look, besides Le'Veon Moss, who has been very consistent and definitely the most consistent playmaker on this football team offensively, Marcel Reed is a, much welcomed addition to the rushing room or production room in general, because this offense just ain't had a whole lot of production to begin with. Not a whole lot of playmakers, in the wide receiver room at this point. So any edge that you can get, you'll take right now. And Marcel Reed, with his rushing ability, I think provides an edge over what Connor Wegman brought to the offense. What do you think about the quarterbacks in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Brady Cook, obviously the more proven quarterback. He's the guy that we've seen for the past couple of years now for Mizzou. But so far this season hasn't really showed up statistically. When you watch him play, I think that it's fair to say that there's been a little bit of a regression in his play so far. But ultimately, I think we're all just kind of waiting on this Missouri offense and with Brady Cook to turn the corner and really get going here. It seemed like they were doing well early on in the season, but as of lately, they've kind of been sputtering just a bit. Of course, against McNeese State, excuse me, I had Texas A&M's schedule pulled up there, but against Murray State, they scored 51 points. Buffalo, they scored 38. And then against Boston College, 27. Against Vandy, 30. I mean, these aren't necessarily like small numbers, but we expected more against this, for this schedule for Missouri, you would expect a little bit more out of the offense. I do think that they will get things together, but going against this Texas A&M defense isn't exactly like where you start to get right. Now they are coming off of a bye, which I think is going to help them, but did they get better in the bye week? That's my biggest question for the offense and for Brady Cook. And then Marcel Reed, it sounds like they're going to stick with Marcel. I certainly hope that they do. Connor Wegman is going to be back and available for this game, but are they going to go back to Wegman? I kind of hope not, because I think Marcel Reed gives you another dimension with his legs in a way that that Wegman did not. And he's a better fit for this offense. I think with the way that they want to play offense, having that extra dimension with the legs certainly opens up the playbook a little bit more. I like the trajectory of Marcel Reed. I think he's still very unproven, but as of right now, I think he's your better option at quarterback. And if Texas A&M wants to win this game, I think he's got to play.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, look, Mason. I mean, I've done a little bit of digging on this team, and we talked about it a little bit in our early preview. Um, but excuse me, I didn't mean to go forward yet. Um, this team's just not very explosive, and that's really, really, really surprising to me. And the numbers back up exactly what I'm saying. I mean, 76 in the country of in yards from scrimmage, 10 plus yards, or plays 10 plus yards from scrimmage. That 60 plays, that's good for 76 in the country. 107th in the country with 15 plays of 20 plus yards. This team's just not very explosive right now. And part of me begs, it begs the question, does Missouri have a trick or two up their sleeve for this football game? And if you look at their schedule, you can point to a lot of football games in there that you're like, I don't know that you're pulling out the entire playbook for this team. And that's pretty much Missouri's whole schedule so far. It hasn't been a bunch of good teams. Now, Boston College is a lot better than what we thought they were at the time. So Missouri not covering the spread in that football game, looking back, it doesn't surprise me. At that time, it surprised me. But back to my point here, somebody's got to be a playmaker on this offense, and we're just not really seeing it. Another issue that I see is in the red zone. Missouri's red zone touchdown percentage is at 65%. That's good for 58th in the country. So when they get in the red zone, they're only scoring a touchdown 65% of the time. And while that's, still top half of America, right, as far as national rankings, that's not where you want to be and not where this offense should be. So when the field shrinks is when this team has a little bit of issues. And we're going to talk about the Texas A&M defense here in just a minute, and that just feeds right into what this defense wants to do out there on the field. So it is a bit of a concern. The only thing I could say for Missouri at this point is like I said, maybe they've got some tricks up their sleeve that they haven't been ready to, pull that card out yet. And we're going to find out, because I mean, this is definitely the best defense that Missouri has faced this year, and it's not even close. What are your thoughts just on the offense overall, Mason? I mean, 29th in points per game. That's with 36.5. 19th in total offense, 472.5 yards per game. Like, they're getting the yards, but not the points. Rush yards per game, 206.5. That's 26th in the country. 5.16 yards per rush. That's 41st in the country. I mean, they're pretty good everywhere. Average yards per pass attempt, 84th in the country. That's not great. But most of these stats, they're pretty good. Like I said, it's the explosives, it's the getting in the red zone and kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. And if Missouri gets in this football game and they're kicking field goals instead of touchdowns, they're going to be playing right into the hand of Texas A&M, who's going to have 110 or 12,000 people screaming down the back of their neck, and it's going to be really, really tough to deal with. Got to convert in the red zone this weekend if Missouri wants to win this football game. Hey, I think you're muted. Are you not?
My bad. I had a little cough attack there. I had to mute myself for and forgot to unmute myself. So, but anyways, I think statistically, going back to what you were talking about with Mizzou, those numbers aren't bad. Like it's not those are winnable numbers, on offense. But the question for me is, you were doing that against Murray, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vandy. Like, what are you going to do against a defense like Texas A&M? And I think that that's what Vegas is also looking at. Texas A&M is favored in this game. It's a home game for them, but Missouri is a top 10 team. That doesn't make sense to most people, but then when you see what they do on the field, it kind of does make a lot of sense. Texas A&M has faced a solid defense in Notre Dame's, and they scored 13 points, but ultimately I feel like based off of who they've played in Notre Dame, Florida, I guess you could say, and Arkansas, they have a little bit better resume overall in level of competition. So to
Yeah.
me, I'm with you. I mean, this Missouri offense has got to get going if they want to really make a chance or play in the playoffs, which is kind of where we thought that this team would be. We thought going into this season, Missouri would be a fringe playoff team. To me, I think that the offense is behind the defense right now, and this is a game that Missouri's got to win. They really need to win this game if they want to stay in the race for the playoffs. With the schedule that they have, this is a must win, and it's a game that we had circled in the preseason as well. But ultimately, I mean, I really like what they've done in the rushing game with Nate Noel. He's averaging 6.4 yards per carry. Got 2 touchdowns only, but 441 yards total. That's really good in the running game. But you're gonna struggle if you try to go into this game and win it on the ground. It's going to be really tough against this defensive line for Texas A&M. They're going to have to win it over the top at some point in this game. And so far this season, they haven't proven that they can do that. But we saw it last year with the same players, the same skill position players. They were pretty explosive in a lot of areas, and I'm wondering if we're going to see that this week or not. That's really the only question I have, is if they can get out of the dink and dunk system, win with some explosive plays, and we'll know in the first half if they're going to be able to do that or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Let's talk about this defense for just a minute. Corey Batoon takes over for Blake Baker after last season, and with the departures of some really obviously talented players off of this defense that left for the NFL, it left a lot of people like me wondering, what this defense was going to end up looking like. And while it hasn't been a perfect performance in 2024, I guess it's been about as good as what you could expect from like I said, replacing all the talent you did, replacing a defensive coordinator. For all intents and purposes, we talked in the offseason, the offense was going to need to carry this team through the front part of the schedule, and so that this defense could get their footing, and it hasn't been that at all. Now, like you said, the schedule hasn't been difficult. Boston College, the hardest game they've played. But with all that being said, look at these numbers. I mean, they're really, really good. And this defense, it's very, very clear that the numbers tell a very certain story about this defense. They're a good fundamental group, but they're not going to create like a ton of havoc, or at least they haven't yet. They're not going to create a ton of turnovers. And honestly, they are the inverse of Texas A&M. Texas A&M will give you some yards, and I'm not saying they give up a ton of yards. That's not the case, but they'll give you more yards, but they're going to create sacks. They're going to create tackles for loss. They're going to create interceptions. Missouri is more of keep everything in front of us. Plays allowed of 10-plus yards this season, they've only allowed 28 of them. That's number 1 in the country. And like I said, take it with a grain of salt. I know who they've played, yada, yada, yada. But at this point, we're almost halfway through the season, right? So we got to start looking at some stats, and stats are really starting to mean something. And Missouri has been really, really good at just keeping everything in front of them, making their tackles, holding opponents, to where they can't rush the ball and getting them in obvious passing downs. Been great on third down, allowing 25% for opponents on third down. That's good for 7th in the country. For this offense, I feel like you're going to need to create, or excuse me, for this defense in this game for Missouri, I think you're going to need to create a turnover here for to really secure the Missouri victory. You've got to figure out a way to get the football one way or another, whether it's interceptions, 3 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries this season. So haven't been super active as far as taking the ball away. Got to figure out a way to do that this weekend, and I think that would go a long way in Missouri being able to win this football game. Now, Texas A&M people, y'all don't go anywhere. We're about to talk Texas A&M here in a minute. I know you're probably tired of hearing about Missouri, but just give me just a second here, and we'll get over to Texas A&M. Mason, what do you think about this defense? I'm really impressed with it so far this season. They're not exactly going against an offensive juggernaut in Texas A&M, although I will say they run the ball pretty damn well. We'll look at all their stats here in just a minute and kind of what they've been able to do on offense. They run the ball really well. Marcel Reed accentuates that for Texas A&M. We'll really get to see, what the line of scrimmage looks like defensively for Missouri in this football game. What do you think about the defense?
Yeah, well, so far this season, the Achilles heel for Missouri's defense has been running quarterbacks, and that's perfect for this game plan with Marcel Reed. But you look at what Diego Pavia did last week with Vanderbilt, right? Kept it really close. You look at what Boston College did with Castellanos, kept it really close. Marcel Reed kind of fits that paradigm, and I think that they could struggle with Marcel Reed, but ultimately, I mean, as a whole, they've been really good. I'm just concerned about them. I mean, you could make an argument. I'd listen to you if you told me that Texas A&M's offense is the best that they've faced yet. I mean, that's who else would you put in there? Boston College and Vanderbilt. I mean, I would put Texas A&M's offense probably ahead of them when you look at just the personnel and the skill position players that they have. I think that they could get it done this week. It when you have a running quarterback, it really causes a lot of issues for the defense because which I mean Texas A&M doesn't really have the outside skill position players that you would really need to bracket a wide receiver or a tight end or anything like that. So, maybe they can spy and play man on the outside, but there's no doubt that Marcel Reed with the extra dimension, the added dimension of his legs adds a different element to this offense and causes stress on the Missouri defense. How are they going to handle that when they're facing a decent offensive line? I don't know. That's kind of the question to me is can they contain Marcel Reed, make sure that he doesn't get outside of the pocket, and that's a big ask I think for this defense right now.
Yeah, what we have to ask this defense to do in this football game is to do what they haven't done all year, and that's create havoc. They've got to figure out a way to do that, and this is the game that they're going to need to do it because their offense, Missouri's not going and scoring 40 points in this football game. I mean, that's we can go ahead and eliminate that off the board. That's not happening. So the defense is going to have to step up one way, shape, form, or another, and they're going to have to do some of the things that they haven't done this season to be able to get out of Kyle Field alive. Um, let's go over to the Texas A&M side of things, and we'll start with the offense. It obviously hasn't been great. Okay, it's been a big transition. I don't think anybody expected this offense to be top 25 in the country or anything like that this season. Have they played their best football yet? I don't think so. I think this team is still figuring out their identity, right? And figuring out a way to move the ball through the air some. That has been a big issue for this team. 162 yards a game passing, and we I know Notre Dame has a really good defense. So week 1, I'm not even considering that. But if you look at some of these other football games that Texas A&M has played, um, why can't you throw on Florida or Bowling Green or Arkansas, who don't have good secondaries at all? And I'm just being kind of devil's advocate here. I'm asking the question. I already know the answer because this offense is in kind of disarray. It's been in disarray up until this point. I think they're starting to get their footing with the rushing attack. Marcel being able to take off, pick up third downs with his feet, help that rushing game. Le'Veon Moss can't do it by himself. He's done a really, really nice job this season, but he can't do it by himself. So Marcel Reed coming to help in that aspect, I think is really big. Um, do we all trust Marcel Reed to be able to throw the rock around? No, no, that's not going to happen. I think Texas A&M's offense has one mode right now, and it's kind of just low gear, and you can't get behind the sticks, right? And they just got to do their best not to turn the football over and run it successfully and run it again and run it successfully again. I think that's kind of what this offense is right now. Until somebody steps up in the wide receiver room. Not very explosive. You can see the plays of 10 plus yards, 20 plus yards, 64, 75th in the country. Um, you know, just not great with those numbers. Third down conversion 38.71. That's not great, and that's exactly my point. Got to stay ahead of chains here in this football game and run the football, and that's got to be the recipe for Texas A&M. That offensive line's going to have to get a push this weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but one thing I would look at with the receivers for Texas A&M, they've got six receivers that have all had a touchdown. So even though there's not that one kind of go-to guy who has been able to kind of just be the bell cow when it comes to catching the football, they are spreading the ball around pretty good. And you couple some adequate ball playing skills that have come from the receivers with Le'Veon Moss and his effectiveness in the run game. And I do think that there is a recipe for success here for Texas A&M, and of course, playing at home never hurts. But yeah, I mean this is kind of what we expected, though. I think from the Texas A&M offense, we weren't expecting a top half SEC offense or anything like that right out of the gate. I mean, this is a brand new coaching system and a lot of new players, especially with Wegman going out and really not living up to his potential when he was playing early in the season. I think given all of those factors, the offense has been pretty good so far. And they're really, I think the offensive line has held up pretty decently. They've got a tall task though with Missouri this week, and but I think that this is a game that you can look at if you're Texas A&M. If you're able to score some points, you can really build some momentum on the offensive side of the football through this game because, like I said, it's a tall task with the Missouri defense.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Marcel's going to help a lot on third down. Being able to pick up those short yardage third downs. A running quarterback just helps so much with that type of thing. And yeah, I mean, you're going to have to hit an explosive play. I mean, this team hasn't thrown for over 200 yards in a game yet this season. Um, I don't believe there's been a receiver that's had over 100 yards receiving in a game yet. There's only two receivers that have over 100 yards for the whole season. Um, but like I said, somebody's just got to step up this weekend. What's happened to Texas A&M in the past doesn't mean that's what's going to happen this weekend. But my point in all this is somebody's got to step up because if you think that you're going to just line it up and run it down Missouri's throat all afternoon, I just think you got another thing coming. I don't think this Texas A&M offensive line is good enough to be able to do that all day long.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, you got to have a trick up your sleeve. I'm sure Mr. Elko has exactly that. Let's talk about this defense. Look, guys, you look at these numbers, they're not overwhelming. They're not unbelievable, but they create a lot of havoc. Lots of turnovers this season. They've gained 9 turnovers. That's good for 16th in the country. 32 tackles for loss. That's good for 29th in the country. 8 sacks. That's not great, but third down percentage allowed, 30.16. That's pretty doggone good. And then red zone touchdown percentage allowed, 45.45%. So this is a bend don't break defense. That's what is going on here. It's once we get you bottled up on one side of the field or the other, we feast. And between the 20s, they're trying to just keep everything in front of them. And Mike Elko is a defensive mastermind. I mean, it's well known in college football. We've all known what he did the last time he was at Texas A&M, and I have every reason to believe that he's going to be doing that again. And they are currently having a pretty good season on that side of the football. Um, there was a couple of games this season where like Bowling Green. Look, Bowling Green can just pass the ball pretty well. So some people might look at that game and say, and it was a little too close. Bowling Green shouldn't be playing that close to Texas A&M, but Bowling Green can throw the football around. I mean, and they did a little bit in that football game, and um, you know, I think that's what made it as close as it was. But for the most part, this defense has been pretty good at not allowing teams into the end zone in most cases. I think it's a pretty doggone good defense. I think the defensive line is strong as hell, and it's going to really, really test Missouri's offensive line this weekend. What do you think about the defense?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Is the D line especially has been good up the middle. You're not running up the middle against this defensive line, pretty much. Period. And unless you've just got a really good offensive line to line up against them. But one area that I think if you're Missouri, you're looking at trying to really penetrate is the outside of the running back zone plays and things like that. That they're going to try to get Nate Noel outside of the perimeter. That's kind of his skill set, anyways. So to me, if I'm looking at Texas A&M's defensive line, you got to contain. Right, you got to contain Brady Cook on the outside, and you got to contain Nate Noel and this rushing attack, and keep them from moving it outside. If there is a weakness in this defense, it's been on the back end and in the secondary. So again, you got to. I mean, we talked about the Missouri offense and how they're going to have to win over the top. Well, obviously, Texas A&M is going to have to stop that from happening, because that's going to be the game plan for Missouri coming into this. Can they continue to wreak havoc in the backfield? Can they get some pressure on the quarterback, and then contain the outside on the running game? If they do all those things, I think that they will stop this Missouri attack. But ultimately, yeah, Texas A&M has been a bend don't break defense. I think that they continue to do that, but just limit the explosives, continue to play your style of football, and I think that Texas A&M can definitely have some success in this game.
Well, it's going to be up to that secondary to really step up and fill the void. If that defensive line isn't able to get home, then and I'm interested to see what Texas A&M does defensively in this football game as far as that goes. Are you bringing pressure in this football game? Are you trying to just bring four? Right? That's what I'm most interested in. I know it'll be a mix, but I'm interested to see how they start the football game. Do they back everybody up in coverage? And because, I mean, look, it's no secret. Luther Burden is a bomb waiting to go off. And at any moment, he can just take a football game over. So it's going to be up to the secondary to be able to cover, him and Theo Weiss, who can be a pain in the butt and have been for a lot of teams over the last few years. I just wanted to mention Will Lee, one of the standout guys there in the secondary. 6 pass deflections, an interception, 20 tackles this season. Marcus Ratcliffe's got 3 interceptions. This secondary has been the primary cause of that turnover margin and the turnovers gained that you see there on the stat sheet. The secondary has had a lot to do with that. Like I said, where they will bend, they will step up and jump a route every once in a while, and they can get up and get the ball, no doubt about it. So it'll be interesting for Cook, who has been pretty good at protecting the football. It'll be interesting to see how he faces off against this secondary, and if he's even got enough time, to try to pick that secondary apart. Let's get into our predictions for this one, Mason. Texas A&M is favored by 2. I get I get the 2. I really do get the 2 being at Kyle Field, and I think this is a big matchup. Um, and we haven't seen Missouri face this level of competition this season. There's no doubt about it. I'm just not ready to bet Texas A&M to cover 2 points against Missouri at this point. I think Missouri is obviously a couple of years ahead of where Texas A&M is right now, and it's not any fault of any one Texas A&M player or a coach or obviously the fans or anything like that. I think this is a team on the rise, but I just don't think they've risen yet. And while Texas A&M has got some great football ahead of them, we haven't seen their best football this season. And I think that towards the end of the season, whenever Texas A&M goes and faces Texas at the end of the season, that's all eyes are going to be glued on that, because what we have right now versus what we're going to have at the end of the season are two totally different things, in my opinion. My gut has told me all week to take Missouri +2. I'm going to take Missouri plus the points here. I think this offense is able to figure out a way to get explosive enough times in this football game to win it. I think Missouri wins this football game 27-21.
Well, I'm with you in a sense that this is an unfinished product for the Aggies so far this year. I do think that by the end of the year, when they go to when they face Texas, they're going to be a much different team. But at this point, we're headed into Week 6. I think that this is where Texas A&M starts to turn the page a little bit. We start to see that identity come from this A&M offense, as well as the defense. I think that the lack of explosivity from Missouri is gonna hamper them in this game. It's gonna kind of feed right into the Texas A&M defense's strategy, where they already play bend don't break, right? We know that. So if you limit the explosives, reduce Missouri's scoring capabilities down to field goals, and then I do think that this game comes down to turnovers. Whoever protects the ball the best is going to win it. And because of that, give me Texas A&M at home at Kyle Field. I think that they can win it by a field goal. Score prediction, I guess I would say probably like 20-23 would be my score prediction. That would be an under hitting in that, but I like Texas A&M here. I think that they're turning the page, and you're going to start to see the transformation of this team in this game, and then that'll crescendo to Texas at the end of the year to be a much more competitive game than what it looks like it will be right now. But give me Texas A&M, a team that's finding its identity, getting better week by week to really build some momentum in this football game and win it at home at Kyle Field.